Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever and wherever you're watching or listening. This is the Awesemo NHL DFS Pick Show, and I am your host, Michael Clifford, aka Slim Cliffy. Today is day 2 of the NHL playoffs. Had a few blowouts last night, not really some close games, except for that last one between Edmonton and LA, and then Mike Smith in the final 5 minutes there. And the Kings escape with game one. Real fun slate of games, though, that we have up ahead here. Before we get too much further, just want to mention our sponsor, PrizePicks. They are the sponsor for this show, have been the sponsor since we started doing these shorter videos. And PrizePicks is where you can do daily prop-based contests every single day. If you want to join PrizePicks, use the promo code Awesemo AWESEMO for a $100 first match deposit bonus. There's no sharks, there are no optimizers, and there are no mass entries. So it's just you against one other person and not one other person. There are many people in the contest, but each person only has one lineup. You use 5-player lineups that can net up to 10 times your entry fee. You can use your knowledge across a variety of sports for cross-sport entries as well. So it doesn't have to be just hockey. You can do MLB or NBA or what have you. To get access to PrizePicks, just head on over to the App Store or Google Play, or you can just go right to PrizePicks.com. You can use our free player props tools here at Awesemo. Just head on over to oddsshopper.com. It's a free service here at Awesemo where we help people shop for the best betting and prop lines, and those prop lines obviously can help you a lot with PrizePicks. You can get 1 month free of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up using the link in the description of this video and you make a deposit at PrizePicks. You will receive an email within 24 to 48 hours after that deposit, and you will be able to redeem your free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. We'll be talking about PrizePicks a little bit at the end of the show. I'm going to give you guys a couple of picks to look at for tonight's slate. Should mention, congrats to Jake Harry, our boss at Awesemo, took down the $20K $15 over on DraftKings last night. Had Toronto won, St. Louis won with a one-off Alex Iafallo, not a bad guy to one-off last night. So congrats to him for taking down that 20K. Hopefully somebody else from the Awesemo group or anybody watching this video can take down 20K here tonight. All right, let's start looking into these games a little bit. We're going to start with Pittsburgh going into New York to face the Rangers. Both sides mostly healthy. Obviously, Pittsburgh is still missing Tristan Jarry, so Casey DeSmith will start going up. They haven't confirmed it yet, but it's going to be Igor Shesterkin starting for the Rangers. The Rangers have a 3.0 implied goal total. Pittsburgh sitting at 2.6. Now, there was a lot made about the Penguins' kind of lackluster play down the stretch, and there was something to it. In Pittsburgh the Pittsburgh top line's final roughly 100 minutes of the season, they only controlled 52% of the scoring chances while they're on the ice. Not really great for how good that line can be. At the other end of the spectrum, over the final 190-ish minutes of the Rangers top line was Frank Vatrano there, and that should be the matchup here tonight. They're controlling 56% of the expected goals, so they were playing very, very well. Pittsburgh's second and third lines don't have massive samples behind them, but Dan Heinen and Evgeny Malkin have typically played very well together when they have played together this season, so that could be a sneaky second line here from the Penguins, coming in with very low ownership. We have them at about 1% on DraftKings, about 2% on FanDuel. So might not be a bad filler stack here going up against that somewhat revamped Rangers second line. That Rangers second line, they scored a lot, but their defensive numbers were not great to finish the season, a little bit below water by scoring chances for and against. So that Pittsburgh second line could be one of those sneaky lower owned-ish stacks, kind of like Los Angeles 2 was last night. That could get there. So the reason for the low ownership is obviously who they're facing. Igor Shesterkin, likely the best goalie in hockey, going to the win goalie of the year, might even win MVP. So that is kind of what they're facing. That's the reason for the low ownership. But they have played well. Ricard Raquel, the second winger on that line. So don't mind Pittsburgh too as a fillerish type stack here tonight. I do like the Rangers top line the most in this game. We don't really have a lot of ownership on them. They're coming in under 15% owned, which it isn't bad. It's only a 4-game slate. They're at home with a 3 total. Casey DeSmith, not really a great goalie. So they were playing very well to finish the season. So I do like Rangers 1 and Pittsburgh 2 out of this game. If you're going further, I don't think you need to go further down than that for the third and fourth lines in this game. If you want a one-off, somebody like a Kasperi Kapanen or a Philip Hedl, I think that's fine. But I think it's Rangers 1 and Pittsburgh 2 for me out of this one. Looking on the blue line, Jacob Trouba, his price has come down a bit on DraftKings, pretty reasonable at 5,200. There are a lot of times towards the end of the season, he's at 56, 5,800. He typically leads the Rangers blue line in peripherals that matter, shots and block shots. So don't mind Jacob Trouba if you're not going to play Adam Fox here tonight. And Pittsburgh does have a good, not great penalty kill, but a good penalty kill. So the Rangers do rely a lot on their power play. So maybe Trouba could make a decent pivot away from a higher owned Fox here tonight. Moving on to Washington and Florida. This looks to be one of the more lopsided matchups of the first round. Certainly a lot of people are picking Florida to win this. Florida has a 3.8 implied goal total. Washington has a 2.9 implied goal total. Some important injury news here. Alex Ovechkin back in the lineup for Washington. He's going to be on the top line with Evgeny Kuznetsov and Connor Sheary. He missed the final 3 or 4 games of the season, but looks like he's ready to go. On the Florida side, they get back Aaron Ekblad. He had been out for about 2 months. He's going to be back in on the top pair, on the top power play unit. And he's a guy that just helps out everywhere. He helps offensively, he helps defensively, helps on the power play, helps on the penalty kill. It's a real nice boost on the back end to this team, especially on the defensive side of things. When we are looking at Florida ownership, I'm going to share that on the screen with you guys right now. We have a lot of Colorado and Calgary ownership coming in. You see, McKinnon, Rantanen, Markstrom, Nichushkin, McCarlin, Honchachuk, all those guys coming in 25% plus here tonight. There's going to be a lot of Colorado and Calgary ownership. There's going to be a lot of ownership on Florida, but it's going to be spread out. We have the top line around 10%. We have the second line coming in, 15, 16%. We have the third line coming in, somewhere 8 to 10%. So there's going to be ownership on Florida, but it is going to be spread out. And I think the way I would attack the Florida Panthers, if I was going to stack them, it wouldn't be a power play stack. That's something that we did a lot during the regular season, like, Barkov, Huberdeau, and Sam Bennett when he was there, or Anthony Duclair when he was there, Sam Reinhart's still on the top power play unit. But Washington actually has an elite penalty kill, one of the best in the league over the final 5 or 6 weeks of the season. The Panthers do get Ekblad back. He does help their power play, but he's been out for 2 months. So, maybe there's a little bit of rust there that could affect the power play and their movement a little bit. So I think I would stick with the even strength lines here. And it's, the Washington top line, this particular iteration of Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, and Sheary just hasn't been good defensively. 32 scoring chances against per 60 minutes and 170 minutes together this year. Again, only 27 generated. So only 46% of the scoring chance share. The Florida top line, not super elite, but still 55% plus, 3.8 goals scored per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Only one guy is on the top power play unit, but, it's a pretty cheap top line. Barkov is very expensive, but at least over on DraftKings, for Verhaeghe, only 2,800. Duclair, only 3,700. They're a lot more expensive on FanDuel, with Verhaeghe coming in at 5K even. So on FanDuel, it's a little bit more of an open question. Maybe you want to dip down to Florida 2 in that instance, because, Jonathan Huberdeau, extremely expensive, but Sam Bennett and Claude Giroux, reasonable on FanDuel. We have that line coming in under 10% on FanDuel here tonight. So where both lines are coming in about the same ownership on FD, I think I might favor Florida 2 a little bit here. They did have really, really good numbers in a small sample, about 65 minutes together, about 40 scoring chances generated per 60 minutes. They're really, really good at 5-on-5. So Florida 2 for me on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I'd probably prefer Florida 1 for some savings. It allows you to get in those more expensive Colorado and Calgary players later. On the Washington side, the Florida penalty kill, not great, but the Washington power plays average to, below average pretty much all season. Now, they have all the guys back in their lineup, and this particular five-man unit was pretty good when they were together, but they didn't have a lot of time together. You wonder what the real status is of Alex Ovechkin. So I think you're fine with power play stacking the Washington side here if you want. So you can do like an Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Oshie stack, especially where Oshie on DraftKings is only $3,000. So makes that stack very palatable, coming in under 16,000 total of Ovi, Kuznetsov, and Oshie if you want to do something like that. Or, take out Kuznetsov, add in Nicholas Backstrom, and save yourself a couple $1,000s. That might be one way to attack it. But if we're going to even strength stack, that Washington third line, again, a small sample, but very, very good together. And you see the names Mantha, Eller, and Oshie. I don't think it would surprise anybody that they do play very well. Now, the Florida third line, very good in their own right, but Anton Lundell hasn't played a lot over the last 10 days, just a brief stint in one game, about 6 minutes of ice time. So maybe he's got a little bit of a ding up going. Same thing with Mason Marchment, who has been missing some practices lately. So maybe a little bit more banged up than the Florida coach will admit. So if you want to go a little bit deeper and go to a cheapish line, don't mind Washington 3 here. But for me, it's Florida 1 or Florida 2 that I like most in this game. For blue liners on DraftKings, Washington's the only defenseman that blocks shots are the guys on the third pair typically. So, I think John Carlson, if you want to use him, is fine as a one-off, even where he's only priced at $5,500. Otherwise, Dmitry Orlov, now that he's below $3K, I think is just fine. On the Florida side, if you want to wait to see how Aaron Ekblad plays, especially where he's going to come in over 15% owned on DraftKings and, closer to 20% on FanDuel. If you want to see how he fares before, playing somebody that widely owned, I think that's just fine. You can dip down to somebody like a Gustav Forsling over on FanDuel or on DraftKings. Mackenzie Weegar at 4K flat, getting his D partner back. Probably not a bad pivot if you need to save some money here tonight. Vitek Vanacek starting for Washington does kind of throw a little bit of a wrench in things. He had a much better season by goal saved above average, high danger save percentage, some metrics we use to measure goalie success other than just, 5-on-5 save percentage or whatever. He had a much better season than Ilya Samsonov. So, maybe he can steal one, but this is one of the more high-powered offensive teams in the league. So, buyer beware when you're rostering Vitek Vanacek. Nashville and Colorado, probably the most lopsided matchup that we have in the first round. Some big news for Colorado. They get Gabriel Landeskog back. He's going to be on the second line with Nazem Kadri. Nazem Kadri will be back as well. He had been missing some time with an illness, but he was at morning skate today. So Nichushkin, McKinnon, Rantanen top line, Landeskog, Kadri, Lehkonen second line. Landeskog, like Ekblad, hasn't played in about nearly 2 months, which means we don't have a sample on that second line here. But the Nashville depth hasn't been very good. Doesn't matter what you want to call the Johansson line, the second line, the third line, or whatever. The best you can say about them is that they've been about break even by scoring chance share. So break even is not going to cut it against Colorado. So I don't really like the Nashville depth for any stacking. So if anything, it'd be the top line or bust for me from Nashville. And the Nashville top line did play well down the stretch. Once they put Granlund back on that top line, 46 scoring chances generated per 60 minutes in their sample in the month of April. That's really, really good. Obviously, Colorado's top line itself is very, very good, but below average by expected goals against. It's just that they generate a lot of offense. So maybe they can be had in some counterattacks, but I see that Nashville's top line is coming in around 10% owned. I feel that's a little bit high for a 2.6 total going into Colorado. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad stack. They're coming in, right about Their top 2 percentage by our top stacks tool at Awesemo.com, so I think it's fine. But for me in this game, this is one of the power play stacking areas that I like. Nashville's penalty kill was absolutely awful down the stretch. Bottom 5 in the league by expected goals against over the final 5 weeks. The only thing that saved them was UC Saros. Obviously, with UC Saros injured, David Riddick is really going to have to stand on his head on that penalty kill to help Nashville out. So I do like power play stacking Colorado here to try to dilute some of that high ownership. McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, and Kadri expected to be on the power play. And at least on DraftKings, Landeskog's price has dropped a lot because he was injured for so long. So it's very easy to fit in some sort of power play stack. Tougher when you include Cale Makar. But there is something to be worked out there against this bad Nashville penalty kill. So that's what I like most from the Colorado side. On the Nashville side, again, the depth really not that great. I think I'd just be looking at some one-offs, maybe like a Tanner Jeannot one-off. That's about it, really. Like, there just isn't a lot to get excited about from this team other than the top line, and the top line's ownership is coming in basically bang on what we expect them to have. So really not a lot for me on the Nashville side. Dante Fabro, I think, is fine on the blue line if you want to use him. He could block some shots here tonight. On the Colorado side, it's Taves or Makar. It depends how much salary you want to have used up amongst one defenseman, but either of those guys perfectly fine in play for me. Finally, Dallas-Calgary, another fairly lopsided matchup. Dallas is basically a one-line team at this point. The top line is elite. Their final 200-plus minutes together, they controlled 68% of the scoring chances, which is just phenomenal. But the second and third lines very much below water, even though not a huge sample on them. When you break it down to two-man sample, like Sagan and Nemesnikov for Dallas, or Faksa and Gurianov for Dallas, and those second and third lines, all well below water. So I think if you're going to be stacking anything from Dallas, it's the top line. We do have the top line as one of the better leverage spots over on DraftKings, second, in fact, behind the Pittsburgh top line. Less so on FanDuel because they are, relatively cheaper compared to how much salary you're able to use, but still good leverage. So, if you're playing a 20 max or something tonight, maybe sneak one or two of those Dallas lines in. That top line can, really do damage against anybody. And if this team, puts up 3 or 4 goals tonight, I suspect the top line would have a lot to do with it. On the Calgary side, that second line hadn't really played well down the stretch, but I have more faith in them turning it around than I do the Dallas side. The problem is that they're coming in with a lot of ownership. So I might even dip down to the third line for Calgary. If you're doing a Colorado power play stack or a Rangers power play stack or something, you need to save a lot of money, like a 2-man of Yarncroc and Coleman or Dubé and Coleman or something like that, I think is just fine going up against pretty bad depth from the Dallas Stars here. Obviously, the Calgary top line, very much in play. Best leverage spot of the night over on FanDuel for us, and fourth amongst all lines today over on DraftKings. So Calgary won, absolutely in play here tonight, but it's Jake Ottinger. He played very, very well this season, 4th in the league in high danger save percentage behind Ilya Sorokin, Igor Shesterkin, and Darcy Kemper. So, if you need a cheapish goalie, don't mind Jake Ottinger for tournaments here tonight. Not much for me on the blue line on either side. John Klingberg is back. That should help the Dallas power play. Noah Hannafin's price has come up a lot, especially over on DraftKings. So I think I like Chris Tanev. Maybe he can get a block bonus for us here tonight over on DraftKings. Don't mind him for cheap from Calgary. So that's it for me today. As I said, I do like Jake Ottinger for kind of more of a long shot. I do think Igor Shesterkin should, he's going to draw a lot of ownership, but I think rightly so. Vitek Vanacek would be another one of those long shots that I like here tonight. For our prize picks, Mika Zibanejad, over 2.5 over on PrizePicks, 2.5 shots on goal, that is. We haven't projected for 3.3 at Odds Shopper. So obviously we haven't projected for a lot more than what is over under is set. So we do like the Mika Zibanejad over. And for an under, Anthony Duclair, he's at an even 2.0 over on PrizePicks. We haven't projected for 1.9, so it's pretty close. And I do like the Florida top line here tonight. but we do have him projected for less than what PrizePicks is asking. So if you're looking for an under, Anthony Duclair is certainly in consideration. All right, we got to get out of here. That's it for us today. Good luck tonight, everybody. Josh will be back tomorrow. I'll be back the day after, and just enjoy the playoffs.